Welcome to EMDR Chat with Kurt and Michelle. I'm Dr. Curtis Rounson.
And I am Dr. Michelle Gottlieb, and we are so glad that you are here. Today we're going to talk about addictions, and very specifically about DeTUR. DeTUR is an urge reduction protocol. As I'm sure you know, it's not enough just to deal with the trauma. Sometimes we need to deal with that urge to use as well. And we have an expert with us today. And our expert is Dr. Kristen Garubba. And she is, goodness, I met Kristen, 4 years ago, I think, when she was in one of our EMDR trainings. And when we met her, we all went, "Ooh, she's a keeper." And so then we started looking for someone that Dr. AJ Popky, which we're going to tell you about AJ in a second, he was starting the retirement process, and someone that we could train to be the new. And so she's been doing that for us, and she is amazing. She's also adjunct faculty at Cal State Fullerton. She's faculty at the Chicago School. She's in private practice. She's worked at rehabs and all kinds of goodies. But before we let Kristen talk, Kurt, would you please talk about, because you love history, the history of DeTUR and AJ and kind of where this all came from?
Oh, yeah. I love this. Dr. AJ Popky was one of the very early EMDR people, without which there would probably not have been an EMDR Institute. But AJ really wasn't a mental health professional in the beginning. He was working, I believe, in computers in Silicon Valley. And, he was there at the very beginning when Francine had her walk in the park. And it so interested AJ that he went on after that and got his master's and his doctorate degree and got licensed as a mental health professional. And AJ, for those of you who don't know, in the late 80s, early 90s, there was the movement among healthcare professionals about dealing with smoking and how it was caused lung cancers and diseases. And they had all these programs. I remember the SHIC program where you go in for a week-long thing and you would just, you would satiate, you would overdo smoking and as a way to try to extinguish the cravings. And AJ, having been trained in EMDR in the very beginning, had an interesting thought. He says, well, if memory networks are the things that cause us to get triggered in the present from the memory networks that were built in the past, and cravings are a desire to alter our state of consciousness, what would happen if we targeted the cravings themselves and not just the underlying trauma, as Michelle said, that may have led to the need to alter the state of consciousness, and addiction being that solution? AJ had the audacity to think about, what if we target the cravings themselves? Perhaps if we could target the cravings themselves, we could reduce that false positive connection where, that euphoria that comes from the hit or whatever, and break that and help reduce the cravings while also dealing with the underlying traumas that led to the need to alter the consciousness in the first place. So at first, DeTUR was a smoking cessation program, and he developed. It's an adaptation of the EMDR protocol, and then he started broadening out and began using it with alcohol, substance abuse. He did sex addiction, any kind of addiction where there was a craving. AJ began playing with this thing, DeTUR, desensitization and trigger urge reduction. DeTUR, D-E, capital T, capital U, capital R. And that's somewhat of the history. And now, when AJ passed, one of the things he did was that he, in his, the will, gave EMDR PT the exclusive right through his family and estate to train his protocol. And we have someone that AJ trained, and that's Kristen. So with that, Michelle, I'll throw it back to you.
All right, thank you. So, Kristen, we've all kind of touched on this a little bit, but can you just say a little bit more about what is the connection between trauma and addiction?
Yes. So, hi, Dr. Kurt and Dr. Michelle, and Dr. Kristen, and I would like to say, actually, I met you guys 5 years ago, which was
5
very
years
exciting.
ago.
I'm like, add in the extra year. It's a big deal. So what AJ started and, what I've continued on and a little bit of research that's been done is that when we create this cycle, when trauma's happening, when there are negative feelings or negative events we'd like to go away or we'd like to feel better about, we start to engage in some of these addictive behaviors, or what I like to refer to them as maladaptive coping skills. What we've learned is that when you engage in smoking or drinking or sex or video games these days, it has a lot to do with decreasing the negative feelings that you're having or wiping them out. So then you've now been rewarded for doing this thing to make your negative feelings go away or your trauma. We know that there's a link, and as soon as you start to do the negative coping more, you create a lovely little cycle where you have feelings of the traumatic event, you have negative feelings, you use the drinking, the drugs, the coping, and it goes away, and then the negative feelings come back, and you've created a nice little loop. So if we can work to reduce the trauma associated with the addictive behaviors, we see less of the addictive behaviors because you don't need it anymore. You're slowly breaking the circle where you no longer need it.
Love that. And I had, actually, Dr. Deborah Silveria told me this, and I just always loved it, of talking about addictions as both the push and the pull. The push, of course, of the trauma, that maladaptive coping mechanism, but the pull because it feels good. A lot of that addictive behavior feels good. So, and that's, again, that can be the urge to use as well. So can you talk a little bit about, what DeTUR is and how it works and what that adaptation is?
Yes, of course. So as Dr. Kurt mentioned, DeTUR is an urge reduction model. So what we do is we allow the client to focus on the cravings that they are having. Then we use bilateral stimulation to reduce those cravings. And how do we do that? We use a bunch of cognitive interweaves that accelerate a positive feeling that the person begins to feel. And so what that does is we're using the cognitive interweaves, we're doing the bilateral stimulation, is that we encourage the person to look at the craving, and then we start adding in positive cognitive interweaves to encourage a positive behavior. So instead of focusing on doing the negative behaviors, we actually use those interweaves to push the brain towards the positive, which, as AJ said, the brain wants to be positive. We're just helping it get there. And we do that using cognitive interweaves. I think what a lot of clinicians find to be difficult yet interesting and then exhilarating is that you're using these positive interweaves during bilateral stimulation. And that's one of the key differences in the urge reduction is by bilaterals and cognitive interweaves. You are no longer the silent therapist.
And
that's
you're
right.
pushing, yes.
And
go ahead.
He called that, was it a positive goal state?
Yes.
Yeah.
And thank you, because in a lot of ways it's like, well, isn't this just standard protocol? But there are some significant differences between DeTUR and what AJ developed and standard protocol.
Mm-hmm.
And so we talk a lot more. We throw out all kinds of positive cognitive interweaves during the reprocessing. Is there anything else that you would say is different than from standard protocol?
Yes, I will say with the DeTUR model, we focus solely on cravings and not the trauma. We do get to the trauma eventually, but we go in focusing on the cravings. Another thing that differs between DeTUR and standard protocol is the cognitive interweave and bilateral sets are much shorter, and they may be using 18 to 20 because we're focusing specifically in one area. We don't want the brain to wander too much. So we want to keep it in a positive moment, focus on those positive goal states, and focus on those alternative positive behaviors. If we do find trauma, there's a wonderful transition where we will actually go and address it. But ultimately, in the end, we're always coming back to the cravings and the urges and the triggers that cause these behaviors. But there is a beautiful dance between DeTUR and standard protocol to heal from trauma while reducing the cravings
Oh, I love
and the
that.
urges.
Yeah.
It's just a wonderful intervention. And I think one of my favorite things when I'm training clinicians to do the DeTUR model is that they cannot believe how positive they feel when they're doing their goal state and when they walk away from the weekend having managed a little bit of the craving. I always get, there's no way I can feel good this fast. There's no way I can be positive. And I just say, yeah, you can. And it's real and it works.
Very cool. So
Yeah.
there are other therapies that deal with urge reduction. Can you speak a little bit about, compare contrast DeTUR to some of these others?
There's a few out there that come up pretty often. Anywhere from, the cravings protocol, where the biggest feature is working to, adjust the cravings and extinguish them, but they don't kind of engage in the bilateral use that we use. They also kind of don't allow us to touch on the trauma. And then we have the feeling state protocol, which comes up often as well, which allows the person to look at the thoughts, allows them to look at the cycle that they've created, and engaging in this addictive behavior, and then breaking the feelings and the behavior. They start to break them apart so it talks about cognition and thought, but it doesn't give us the trauma touch that we know is so important. So there's a few of those as well. And for us with DeTUR, our bilaterals and working with the brain, we move the brain to a positive state where kind of some of those other protocols don't.
Interesting.
So for us, it's about working with the mind, adjusting it and helping it.
Right. I had the lovely opportunity to see AJ present DeTUR live, and watching him do this and watching him trust the client's brain, it was just a work of art. It was beautiful.
Yes, his dance was lovely.
Yeah.
I always love to watch him in his videos, which we like to share, because AJ knew the protocol, he made it, he developed it, and he just follows. No pushing, just following.
Yeah. Yeah. He was an artist.
He was.
That he was.
Okay, so what I'm understanding you to say is, and please speak more to this, is that it's not enough just to focus on the trauma. It's not enough just to focus on the urge. You kind of need a package deal on this one.
Yes, absolutely. I think what we find a lot of the time is as we're working on some triggers, we can move the brain to a positive state very quickly because those triggers are not that big of a deal, very easily managed. But when you get to the bigger triggers, when you get to maybe, let's say somebody has had a lot of trauma or anxiety around family, and they say, my family triggers me to drink. And we start to work on these urges, and it goes down a little, but it doesn't quite go down all the way. And we say, you know what? There's something more. It's not just a little thing drinking. It's your family. There's something going on. Let's work on that. So we move into the trauma piece and we start to address the parts of the family that made us feel so crappy. They made us have negative feelings, and the coping was the alcohol. So we go, you know what? Let's work on that. We go in, we address the trauma surrounding the family, we address the negative feelings, and we help the person change their response. And we help move towards, you know what? I can deal with these negative feelings. The trauma's been reduced. Drinking maybe doesn't need to happen.
Yeah.
Do you have any really cool success stories?
Oh, yes. I do have a couple that I would like to share. My favorite was actually not a substance addiction. It was a sugar addiction. And the reason I mention that is because it really was one of the moments where I had to move in and out of standard protocol several times. I had a client who had a sugar addiction, and there was sweets all over the house. There was candy and sugar stored and moved and hidden in the garage, in the kitchen, in the bedroom. It was everywhere. And we started to trigger the work on the addiction. And the little things were easy. Like when she'd walk in the door and want to have it, we're like, okay, can you do something else when you walk in the door? That was easy. But when we started moving into the tougher traumas, everything surrounded around her mother, where there was, emotional abuse, and she would use the sweets to redirect self, change state of mind. When we realized that it was also used around school performance, where she would do badly in school, and so she would use the sugar to cope and to feel better. Once we finished our work, she was able to report abstinence. I believe it was for up to a month from sugars and sweets, as she was able to move through the traumas, give herself different positive rewards, and finding that although she also loved the sugar, it made her body feel bad. So we were able to move towards improved health, reduced trauma response, and ultimately abstinence from the thing that she craved to feel better. So we always like to bring it back to, we use the bad behaviors to feel better.
Right. She could help
She
herself
didn't need
feel
it
better
anymore.
in healthy,
Yeah.
adaptive
Good.
ways, right? Love that. Love that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
I know that I've heard of people just using eye movements on the feeling of cravings, and I think one of the things that they miss from the DeTUR protocol is this feeling positive state. That was the whole idea of creating a place where a person could even envision or think about living their life without this addiction. And as you know, many people that come in and are suffering from an addiction of some kind, they really can't imagine themselves or picture themselves of living life without it. And one of the great things about the DeTUR protocol was it creates that within them, a feeling state within them that actually allows them to experience what it would be like. And that's, I think, one of the geniuses of DeTUR.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's funny when we're doing that particular exercise with DeTUR, we, in asking the person to envision it, one of the other tweaks, and Kurt, you touch on it, is when we create what we like to call the positive state or life after treatment, is that when a person says, I will not be doing this, I will not be doing that, our big thing, and what AJ wrote so beautifully was,
Right.
What will you be doing?
Right.
What would you be doing? And that is all about that positive goal state. We remove the word not, we remove the word won't, and we add in
Love
will
that.
do,
Love that.
can do.
Yeah.
And I think in the trainings, again, it goes back to the people that are in the training. When we start this positive goal state with them, there's just shock and awe about the positive energy that flows through their system, and they're so surprised by it, and it makes them so eager to take
let
it
me ask
to
you a
their
question
own
about
clients.
that. I know when we're teaching standard protocol, we're teaching basic training. Consultation is so important because people think they've got it, and then when they go out in the real world and they're like, I don't got it, right? And people don't react the way we told them they would, right? So is DeTUR something
Right.
that consultation is important for as well, or can they just go out and do it?
I believe fully in consultation for DeTUR, and I believe in it for a couple of reasons. One, creating this positive goal state can be a little tricky with clients when you're kind of working on what to say and how to say it. I think that consultation is huge. The other thing is that clinicians really, really struggle to shift their paradigm. So during standard protocol, they're quiet. They don't make any noise unless they absolutely have to. A lot of the times I see these struggles with the cognitive interweaves that are purposeful during the bilateral stimulation. I always encourage consultation because it's a scary thing. It's a new thing. And I think just getting support with that is so key because it is scary. It's a wonderful model, but it's a very, very big paradigm shift. And we're asking you to talk. So there's just a lot of nuance that I think is so critical, that consultation is wonderful.
Thank you, Kristen, for coming in
Absolutely.
and just talking about all this, because I think it's so important. Kristen
You're
does a live, now it's been virtual, training on DeTUR, usually twice a year. We'll have her do it. We also have an on-demand version of AJ teaching DeTUR. Pros and cons, whether you do the on-demand or you do the live one. As amazing and wonderful as AJ was, he was not the most organized human being. And Kristen really has cleaned up a lot of the scripts and everything just to make it flow a little bit better. Hasn't changed it, just cleaned it up.
Right.
That's for you. Just letting you know we do have both.
A little bit.
But Kristen, thank you so much for coming on today and talking about this. All right.
Yes, so key.
And again, if you guys have any topics you would like us to talk about, let us know. And thank you for joining us today.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you for having me.